Hello, welcome to the Big Strategy Podcast. I'm your host and fellow strategist, Jeff Hyatt. This is your go-to spot for real talk with the masterminds of business strategy. It's about sharing stories, insights, and those little nuggets of wisdom to help you unlock big growth. Let's turn the key and spring into action.
Welcome back to this three-part series where I'm reflecting on the three qualities that I felt my dad left me as I shared them in his eulogy. The first was that generosity is the foundation. It's the starting point that makes everything else possible. But generosity needs to extend to those who came before us. That's created the platform that we are able to build on. And that's why I believe that standing on shoulders, in this case, standing on my dad's shoulders, I don't need to act humble or be shy about that fact. I need to understand that it plays a role in strategy. And leaders who acknowledge that others who have come before them have given them a benefit are the ones who sit at advantage. My dad, he came from very little. What he did have, he earned, and he passed that on to me. And that is a work ethic and preparation as a way of life. I remember growing up, he would always have me doing projects with him in the shop or around the house or fixing the car, saying, I'm just teaching you this so that someday you don't embarrass yourself in front of your father-in-law. And fast forward 30 years, I built my house alongside our father-in-law. So with that, thanks, Dad. I didn't embarrass myself. But this same principle also applied to work. He would say, always prepare to make your boss look good. He used this metaphor, this image, like the circus performer who would have the plates spinning on top of the wooden dowels, keeping all these plates in the air. What if, right? On one hand, yes, preparing for those extreme cases provided benefits. But on the other hand, that constant state of preparation brought stress and anxiety. And in his case, I believe it shortened his life. But he was driven by the belief that hard work was the ticket out, and that would be my ticket out as well. So just pause there. As I've shared my platform, I want you to think about the platform that you were given. Was it a family business? Was it a financial head start? Or was it something intangible, a set of values or beliefs that you could do more than where you came from? This was a nuance that I had to learn. This idea, this constant preparation mindset can sap the energy that we need for growth. When you're always getting ready, you can miss the moment to lead, to look ahead, and to advocate for yourself. I think about like a tree, right? On one hand, if it doesn't feel it's sturdy or needs more nutrients, it invests its energy down to grow deeper roots. On the other hand, it can build the roots wider to, again, capture more resources or to help steady itself. Be prepared for that what if moment. But the trees that survive are the trees that grow upward. And we see this here in California, right? You study the giant redwoods, they build ecosystems in the canopies. And when they're a small sapling, they don't know that those networks exist hundreds of feet in the air. But as these redwoods grow to 100, 200 feet tall, those connections exist. And I've kind of taken that as a metaphor. And really speaks to what was kind of my dad's blind spot, right? And sometimes mine. And that is that managing up and looking ahead requires a different muscle, but not just a different muscle, but a different belief system than just simply showing up prepared. Both matter. You absolutely have to be prepared. Nothing substitutes preparation. But his passing reminded me I don't need to invest the same energy he did in those activities. His shoulders gave me the foundation. And the rest is my job. It's my duty to build higher. How does this connect back to strategy? Well, the best leaders know that they have inherited and what they have to build for themselves. It's okay to admit that those that came before you gave you a head start, gave you some competitive advantage that allows you to not rebuild what they've built, but instead to go forward. And that self-awareness of what you're given, the resources that you have, and how you can leverage them to getting ahead, that self-awareness separates operators from visionaries. Knowing this, I took the advice of my coach, Jill Nichols, and as she has built a local Vistage chapter, I've begun attending those meetings and leveraging the networks that she brings together, networks of CEOs and other business leaders, and create a private, intimate space where they can share real challenges. And what's very unique about these spaces is what the rooms ask leaders to do. They give leaders a space where they don't have to be competitive. They can invest in each other and help lift each other up to create a greater whole. And it's that lifting that creates the truly special group of leaders that this group and most groups provide. And what's remarkable, though, in this, and one of the activities is called issue processing, where each CEO brings one or more challenges that they're facing in their business. And the group dedicates 15, 20, sometimes 30 minutes to address these challenges. Now, there's a strict confidentiality around this, but I can share about the process and that the advice that exchange creates a culture in the room, that letting down of your guard and that idea of generosity being shared. Think about your C-suite. Is it a room where generosity is allowed to exist? Are you standing on each other's shoulders, or is each competing to get to the top of the pyramid? Do you have a team of rivals, or is everyone marching in the same direction? In most boardrooms, admitting that you don't have the answer costs you status. In Vistage, that not knowing is the entry fee. It's that vulnerability is the currency of success at Vistage. And I encourage you to think about your boardrooms and can you bring more vulnerability into those spaces? One way that Vistage and my Vistage group has really helped me is that after my dad's passing, as you know, I stepped away from the microphone here at the podcast. And I started to doubt whether this podcast had value. I brought that vulnerability into the Vistage room. I brought it up as my issue for processing that month. And I was only met with encouragement. Now, there were other things beyond my dad's passing that contributed to this. They were all inside of me. It was nothing my audience said. It was no signal I had received from the market. It was my own self-doubt and the places that came from. But the feedback and encouragement that I got from that group, that's what gave me the courage not only to come back, but to move from the interviewing side of the mic to the speaking side of the mic. And this is what happens when leaders stop performing and start sharing. They get better decisions, faster course corrections, and reduce that feeling of loneliness and isolation at the top. My dad didn't have a Vistage group. In fact, in his drives, sometimes 2-3 hours a day, he ran up massive cell phone bills reaching out to people one at a time. A Vistage group would have been a cheaper, cleaner opportunity to get together and share. But the real point is that he knew he needed shoulders. He was building a platform for others, but at the same time was constantly redesigning and rebuilding and reinforcing the platform that he was standing on. And that was terribly stressful, terribly anxiety-ridden. And as I said, I know that had adverse impacts on his health. So let me ask you, who do you call when you're really in it? Maybe you have a coach. Maybe it's someone you worked with at a previous company. Maybe it's a mentor from outside of your industry, but has great insight into people. If you don't have that room, a Vistage group, a faith community, any space where you can be fully vulnerable, that is a strategic gap that I suggest you close. In all this positive talk about standing on the shoulders of others, I have seen two key mistakes. The first being taking credit for what others build. And the other is leaders who pull the ladder up behind them and don't mentor the next generation. On the idea of credit, how many leaders tell the success story and leave out those who made it possible? Maybe not in a company-wide keynote when you can't address everyone on the product team, etc. But in a memo or a small group presentation or an internal debrief. Remember the mentor who opened the door, who heard their mentee being selfish, or the team member who caught the mistake and began to doubt their value in the organization, knowing that they feel that icky used feeling. When you erase the shoulders that you have stood on, you teach everyone around you that credit is zero sum, and that kills culture. Contrast this with the culture of vulnerability that I shared when I talked about the Vistage group. Second, pulling up the ladder. Leaders who benefited most from mentorship and never paid it forward, they broke the chain. Like the old chain letters we used to get in the mail when we were kids, right? We didn't want to send it to 10 friends or else. But in all seriousness, those leaders, and you know this type of person, when a mentor spends time with them, they view it as an investment in themselves, as a personal asset, not a responsibility that they need or get to pass on. Connect back to the extraction economy example that I used in episode 1. Burning natural gas, oil, coal, something that was generated over millions of years of process for a second of power today, and all at the expense of future generations. This is the same mindset, that zero-sum mindset, this idea of what is mine versus what gets passed on. And this is why I love teaching. In fact, just yesterday, I got a note from one of my students, Eric, who's working at a consulting company in AI, and he says that he uses design thinking every day. And he says, every time I use it, I think of what you taught me in class. And if there's something better than that, I genuinely don't know what it is. But that's the hardest version, and is this. Mentoring the next generation is not about extending your legacy. My daughter's success is not a reflection of me. Maybe you are the CEO, or your CEO is someone who is looking at their successor and saying, I don't see anyone in this company who will run it the same way that I do, so I can't leave. Or it's a privately held or family business where that founder has taken the company from nothing, built it from nothing into what it is today, and are more fearful of the company falling to its previous level than they are about the possibility of it growing, that they hold on even when they know passing the torch is the better answer. They're not building a platform, and that's why their companies will fail, not because of mistakes made by the next generation. So I'd like to name this framework. I'm going to call it the shoulder check. Ask yourself 2 questions, one for each shoulder. Who do you need to acknowledge today? That one person. Maybe it was a mentor, a predecessor, a team member. Post it. Send them a DM. Say it out loud. Let them know that they're someone whose shoulders you've stood on to get to where you are today. And the second is ask yourself, who needs your shoulders right now in return? Not someone who will give you a personal return. One person you can lift up, not to extend your legacy, but to give them a platform to build off of and build something that is their own. For me, I acknowledge Clark Kellogg as my mentor. I acknowledge Jill Nichols as a mentor. It's these 2 people, among many others, whom I've stood on and have helped me professionally. And who needs a shoulder right now? Well, it's my students at campus. They're not a globally recognized institution, but these are students with as much passion as anyone I've seen at Berkeley. They just haven't had the same shoulders to stand on. And if I can build that platform or help provide them some semblance of a platform that they can build their professional life going forward, then I am passing it forward. But to tie this back to my dad, he gave me work ethic and preparation from nothing. No money, no connections, just values and hard work. That's a platform. The question is, would I build on it? And whether I'm building something for the next person to stand on. So looking ahead, generosity and now standing on shoulders, that's how legacy works. And next time, as we close this series, we're going to talk about what it means to leave a legacy. In the meantime, please subscribe to the podcast, share it with someone who you think will benefit, and I'll see you in 2 weeks.